They say every neighborhood has one, right? The person who'll turn a quiet morning into a full-blown circus over something as simple as a father and son fishing on their own shoreline. Well, let me tell you, if you think that's just an internet joke, you haven't met Linda Harwood, queen of Lost Timber Lake and self-appointed empress of the fake HOA. She called the sheriff on me, twice. Once for fishing with my kid at sunrise. Swore up and down she controlled the whole lake. That single morning lit a fuse under a powder keg I never meant to spark, but I sure as hell wasn't about to bow to a woman who built her throne out of threats and paperwork. So I did what any stubborn, recently divorced Montana dad with an engineer's brain would do. I started digging. By the time I was done, Linda wasn't just calling the sheriff. She was shaking in her brand new hiking boots, finding out I owned the entire block she'd been ruling for years. It started like this. The sky was still slate gray, mist floating off the lake in ribbons when I stepped onto the dock with my boy, Colton. You could smell the cold, a sharp, honest mineral tang that always hits hardest before the sun comes up. He sat beside me, 11 years old and handling a rod like he'd been born to it. "Think we'll catch something before breakfast?" he asked, grinning that lopsided Mercer grin. "Always do," I told him. It was one of those rare, real moments, just the hush of water, a heron's distant croak, Colton's boots thunking on the dock. I moved us out here after the divorce, trying to find something close to peace. 8 acres, a weathered cabin, and this quiet lake. Didn't know I needed it till I had it. Peace didn't last long. Tires crunching gravel. Out of nowhere, a sheriff's cruiser crawled down the lane. Sheriff Cody ran, hat low, jaw tight. He already looked sorry for whatever was about to happen. And then I heard her. "Right there, Cody. That's him. That's the trespasser." Linda, in her wine-red jacket, standing on her perfect patch of lawn, waving like I'd stolen her car instead of fishing with my son. Her hiking boots had never seen a trail, and her eyes were laser-focused on us like she was about to have someone carted off for murder. Sheriff Rand shuffled up, giving me the look cops give when they'd rather be anywhere else. "Linda says you're on HOA property." I kept it level. "This is my dock, Cody. My shoreline. You drive by it every time you make the loop." Linda scoffed. "That dock's on community water. Our bylaws clearly, your bylaws." I said, "don't override county plats or state water rights." Her eyes went flat and hard. "Stop pretending you don't know the rules. I sent 3 notices about lake usage." She got right in my face, vibrating with authority that didn't actually exist. "Sheriff, I expect you to enforce the rules. He needs to vacate the water now." Cody looked like he'd swallowed a porcupine. "Maybe just step back from the dock, Evan. Let's not make it messy." But here's the thing. Stepping back tells people like Linda they're right. I looked him dead in the eye. "No," Linda threw up her hands. "For heaven's sake. This is a simple matter of compliance." The lake stayed quiet, like it was listening, waiting to see what I'd do. I reeled to my line and leaned in close to Cody. "Sheriff, this isn't her lake." He frowned, picking up something deeper under the surface. Linda didn't hear me. Not yet. But she learned soon enough, because that ground she thought she ruled, it wasn't hers at all. You want the real beginning? It was 6 months earlier, late September, when Colton and I first drove up the winding dirt road through the lodgepole pines. That first drive, windows down, dust rolling behind the truck, lake flashing silver through the trees, I remember thinking I could breathe again. The cabin was ours. 8 acres, weathered wood, porch facing the water. The first night, after patching up shutters and moving junk left by the last owner, I sat on that porch and just listened to the lake, letting all the noise of the world fade. Then, third morning, click, 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 heels on my deck. Linda showed up holding a fat binder, smile tight as rebar. "Welcome to the community," she said like it was a threat. "Orientation packet, dues, $600 a year, due now. Dock approval, register all guests, pay up or else." I told her I hadn't signed anything, hadn't agreed to any HOA. "It's implied," she snapped. "Without us, this place would fall apart." I asked what the dues even covered. "Community maintenance, lake preservation, harmony." She snapped her binder shut, eyes sharp. "Everyone participates. It keeps the neighborhood pleasant. You wouldn't want to be the neighbor who lowers the tone." She left, strutting like she owned the sunrise. Colton poked his head out. Who was that? Someone who thinks she's in charge, but isn't. That afternoon, Hank Barlow, old as Montana dirt, showed up with cornbread and a kind warning. Figured you could use this after meeting Linda. He grinned, voice rough as gravel. She's like wildfire. Most folks let her do what she does because fighting costs peace. He tipped his hat, but you always got a choice. With Linda, the wrong one costs you more than you think. First envelope came 2 days later. Violation for unauthorized dock presence. $150 fine, deadline immediate. Colton came out with marshmallows, wanting to build a fire. I told him we will, but we got to deal with something first. Didn't know it yet, but that was Linda's first match, and she planned on burning me out before I even unpacked. By Saturday, 5:42 a.m., township inspectors knocking at my door. Clipboard, jacket that smelled of road dust. Got a complaint about unpermitted shoreline work. He checked my doc, shrugged. There's nothing wrong here. But he said somebody on this road really likes calling us. That was just the beginning. Complaints rolled in. Noise, wildlife, unregistered lake craft. Even Colton got hit. Some kid told him he couldn't join the fishing group because his dad doesn't follow the rules. The fishing group? Run by none other than Linda herself. That night, I sat on the porch, wind in the pines, anger running cold and slow. I'd seen people like Linda in my career, people who thought authority was something you could fake if you had enough paper and bluster. But this was different. She was hurting my kid. So I started documenting. Every complaint, every fine, every envelope tucked in my gate. Photos, receipts, a binder thick as a phone book by October. And then, twist of fate, a neighbor showed up. Hank again, chopping wood, nodding like he'd seen it all before. She starts slow, then ramps up until you break. Most folks bend. I'm not most folks, I said. Then she picked the wrong man. That first snowflake drifted down while we talked. By the time I got back to the cabin, another inspector was waiting. Light pollution this time, apparently a danger to wildlife. Even he looked tired. Someone's got your address on speed dial. He signed off, unfounded, and left. It hit me that night. If Linda was going to build a case with fake rules, I'd build a real one. That meant finding what was buried. So I dug into county records, property plats, and every scrap of paperwork left in the cabin. In the crawl space, under warped floorboards, I found an old map, county recorder's stamp, 1978. It showed Lost Timber Lake as it was. Lots, easements, and, most important, the developer's parcels, including strips Linda claimed as community shoreline. It didn't match her story. Not by a mile. Next step, Mara Jensen, property lawyer with a brain like a bandsaw and zero patience for nonsense. She pored over my map and paperwork, eyebrows arched. You're telling me an HOA is issuing fines without being registered with the state? Correct. And they claim lake authority based on covenants that aren't recorded anywhere? Correct. Mara leaned back, tapping the map. Evan, you might own more than your cabin. If these parcels were never legally transferred, the original buyer owns every scrap of land listed here. She found the final trustee ledger from the old developer's bankruptcy, and the name on it nearly knocked me over. Mercer Holdings Trust. My grandfather's trust. The same one that paid for my college, managed by my father until he passed. Turns out, I legally owned not just my land, but all the developer-owned easements, the so-called community shoreline, the road behind Linda's place. Everything Linda's HOA had pretended to rule. So when Linda sent me an emergency HOA meeting summons, mandatory attendance, disciplinary action, I just smiled. I rolled up my old map, stacked Mara's paperwork, and walked into that meeting ready for the storm. Inside, the air was thick, burnt coffee, wet jackets, nerves. Linda stood at the front like a general, her lawyers behind her, violation notices stacked like ammo. We are here tonight, she announced, to address repeated disregard for community standards by Mr. Evan Mercer. I raised my hand. Before we start, can I see your HOA's legal registration? Incorporation papers, bylaws, anything proving you exist in the eyes of Montana. Silence. One lawyer leaned in, whispered to Linda. We don't have those documents with us, she stammered. This is voluntary. This, I interrupted, is fraud, and you know it. Gasps. Hank's eyebrows shot up. I pulled out the map, unrolled it on the table. This is the original 1978 subdivision map, signed, stamped, recorded. These are the developer-owned parcels, the easements, the access ways. Everything you've claimed is HOA property. They all belong to the Mercer Holdings Trust. That's me. Neighbor stared, jaws dropping. Linda looked like she might faint. Sheriff Rand stepped in, studying the paperwork. Linda, he said quietly, we need to talk. The dam finally broke. Neighbors, angry, hurt, betrayed, turned on Linda. You told us dues were required. You threatened my wife over the access path. You made us afraid to have a barbecue. Linda clung to her last shreds of power, but there was nothing left, just a woman standing in a house of lies. And that's where justice finally landed. The county pressed charges, fraud, intimidation, unlawful solicitation. Neighbors got refunds. Linda lost her car, her standing, even her husband. The house she once ruled was sold, quick as lightning, to a young family who filled it with laughter instead of threats. I didn't take any pleasure in seeing her crumble, but I did feel the weight in my chest finally lift. The land remembers its owner, and it always will. We built something real after that. A voluntary committee, transparent, elected. Hank ran gravel repairs. Betty managed the books. I hosted the 4th of July barbecue. Nothing fancy, just neighbors being neighbors. Colton and I fished in peace. Sometimes, sitting on the dock, he'd ask, did we win? No, son, I'd say. We just set things right. And that's the lesson, if there is one. Sometimes, justice isn't about payback. It's about persistence, about making sure truth outweighs noise, that land, like memory, stays honest even when people aren't. Linda thought she could rule by fear. But in the end, fear crumbles. Evidence stands. And every lie she built was washed away by one stubborn dad, a stack of old papers, and a community finally ready to remember who it belonged to. So tell me, how far is too far for someone in power to go before a neighborhood has to stand up and draw the line? Where's the boundary between order and control? Drop your thoughts below. Share your stories. If you've ever had to push back for what's right, let folks know they're not alone. And if you want more true stories about land, justice, and the quiet people who make noise when it matters most, stick around. There's plenty more where that came from.